If you play D&D, chances are you've seen the show Stranger Things, which is about a bunch of kids in the 80s playing D&D. Back in that magical time of breakdancing, DeLoreans, and Duran Duran, there were a lot of horror movies aimed at teens, like Gremlins, Fright Night, Lost Boys, and Nightmare on Elm Street. And you might think the 80s would make a great setting for a one-shot or a horror campaign. Eric Bloat and Josh Palmer have you covered. They have written a game called Dark Places and Demogorgons, and it is D&D set in the 1980s. And I'm going to review it, and I'm also going to give you some tips on how to run it today on Dungeon Craft.
Deathbringer here. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any cool content.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeonmaster, and this channel is about playing the ultimate game of D&D and other tabletop role-playing games.
And I'm Deathbringer. Level up your game by subscribing, and order my t-shirt at the link below to let everyone know you play D&D like a badass.
Dark Places and Demogorgons by Eric Bloat and Josh Palmer is hardbound, 200 slick pages. The back cover says, heavily influenced by 80s pop culture, including Goonies, E.T., Lost Boys, Weird Science, Ghostbusters, Breakfast Club, TV shows like Stranger Things, Erie, Indiana, and Scooby-Doo. I love jumping right into character sheets, and if you played D&D in the 80s, this looks very familiar. It looks like a piece of loose leaf from a binder. Name, alignment, class, hit points, armor class, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity. This is Dungeons & Dragons. It's molded D&D, 3d6. The saving throws have been changed to courage, that's a fear check. Criticals, if you lose half your hit points, you may suffer a debilitating condition. Death, mental poison, but it is instantly familiar to anyone who's played D&D. You will know how to play this game within moments. And it's also simple and accessible for people who've never played D&D before. We're using the basic modifier scale where 13 to 15 is +1, 16 to 17 is +2, and 18 is +3. The attributes, hit points, armor class work exactly the way you think it does. You get a random background. It's optional, but I think these are great. There's 100 of them. Your dad is a locally famous Bigfoot hunter. Your family are health freaks. You can't eat junk food at home. Constitution +1. You're a foreign exchange student from Norway. You speak English and Norwegian. You're very handsome / pretty. Charisma +1. Your parents are doomsday preppers. This is great stuff. Fantastic pictures of the designer's friends from high school. Classes include the kid scientist, the nerd, the geek, the jock, the extreme athlete, the karate kid. And you can see it's very simple. +1 to your armor class, you get an additional attack. The levels are from 2 to 5. This isn't a high-level, high-powered game. The break dancer at level 4, you get +2 to all dance performance roles. The goth, the metalhead, the only description is slayer. Preppy, princess, teen heartthrob, bully, and punk rocker. Eric grew up in small-town Kentucky. I grew up in a suburb of New York. But it's funny how these stereotypes are exactly the same for me as well. The skills are neatly laid out on this page. They give you a bonus when you're doing that thing. They're pretty self-explanatory, like computers, driving, electronics, persuasion. Every time your character levels up, your character gets 2 more skill points plus an intelligence modifier. So that's a good way of making intelligence not a dump stat. Armor is very light, including leather jacket and pants, football pads, and combat boots. There's a usage die mechanic, which is popular in old school games. I'm not going to go over it here, but a lot of people like it. Experience points and leveling up, it looks like you get about an average of 5 to 6 per session. There's a simpling leveling system. Great pages on the 80s versus today. Payphones versus cell phones. Corded phones versus cordless phones. MTV, YouTube. Smoking area in the school for teachers and students versus a smoke-free campus. This is great. In the 80s, Bill Cosby. Today, Bill Cosby. More high school pictures of the designer's friends. This is great. Running the game. It's a combination of old school D&D and 5e. You have advantage and disadvantage. You have extra damage on a natural 20. The characters only go up to 5th level and they don't have too many hit points, maybe 15 to 20 at the max, so it is not a combat heavy game. Players are overmatched and need to outwit and outmaneuver the monsters if they want to survive. Psionics and telekinesis, in case you want to play a fire starter sort of game. And adventure seeds. These are terrific. The alien life form, which is like an E.T., Chupacabra in love, very clever. Gremlins, Freddy Krueger type monsters that can haunt your dreams. The Phantom Fairlane, that's Christine. Werewolves like in Silver Bullet. Human adversaries and their allies, like you gotta have a town policeman. The Boogeyman is like it. Frogmen, ghouls, golems. The Owlbear is here in case you want to do a Stranger Things type scenario where they have to fight an owlbear, which I think is a great idea for a scenario. Vampires, so you could run a scenario that's like Salem's Lot or Fright Night. And some great random charts, NPC quick generation table, villain quirks, random monster generation, basic adventure hooks. These are fantastic. There are 100 of them. I love useful stuff. I love the layout too. They have the alternating gray-white, so it's easy to read. And we have an optional setting, J-Town. It is small town Kentucky, where you can set your games. It's got the geography in bullet points, so like you could see, okay, the fire department's here, the post office is here, the bookstore and the pet store here, creeks and lakes, a nearby army base. Great stuff here. It's a lot of fun, terrific layout, presentation, clever writing. I give Dark Places and Demogorgons a solid thumbs up. I think it'd be great for conventions, Halloween one-shots, and as a way to introduce people who are familiar with the Stranger Things television show to the concepts and mechanics of Dungeons & Dragons. And now for my Game Master advice. It is so easy to create a Stranger Things 80 themed game. You just got to take any monster from the monster manual, like a Mind Flayer or an Owlbear, put it into 80s Kentucky, and you got yourself a game. Like, you've already got the monsters in the stat blocks. You could just import one of those, and it's like an instant evening of fun. And just switching up the settings will make it feel new and fresh for your players. Dark Places and Demogorgons also speaks to the universality of the Dungeons & Dragons system. The mechanics of armor class, hit points, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, you could use that for just about anything. I'm currently planning a spy game, and why am I going to reinvent the wheel? If I'm running a one-shot and it's based on Dungeons & Dragons, then my players instantaneously know how to play the game. Like, that barrier is removed and we can get right into the action, right into the story. So I give Dark Places and Demogorgons a big thumbs up. You can get it at Bloat Games, the link below. Also below, there are links to Dungeon Craft on Facebook, Patreon, where you can get extra stuff, Drive-Thru RPG, where you can get my 5e compatible House Rules Deathbringer, and my Rules Like Cthulhu game, The Eldritch Hack. But don't go away, there's more Dungeon Craft coming up. I'll see you soon. May all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer here. Yeah, I like to rant around, and you better be okay with it. Now get my t-shirt and watch more Dungeon Craft.